How's everybody doing out there? Long time no here. We're going to take you through memory lane. I just want to thank everybody for coming out. Besides everybody's excitement on actually getting to hang with Eddie again, it's it's brought them so many memories, and it's been hard to do. So I know about what's really cool is I know about 80% of you out in that room, and that just makes me feel really good that you're here. And we're going to do a little memory lane for you. And that's what it's all about tradition. So how many people have seen this house before? So this is the original house. And this was made about 1981 or 82. It's a replica of the Penny Mansion. And it was in the Tournament of Roses parade in Pasadena in about 1983. And it ended up in my folks' yard. But it started out looking like this, on a frame. And as you know, if you watch the parade, everything's covered in something that was alive at one time. So what you got here is 1982. So what they're doing here is they're working on the roof. And they're putting up shingles, and those shingles are individual manzanita leaves, glued one at a time. And it takes forever. So this house is a replica of the Penny Mansion, which is in Sierra Madre, California, where my parents grew up. And this is a nonprofit organization. And this barn that they're in is at the city park. And I went down for the very first time in 1979, I drove down there, and my grandfather, we were having family Christmas down there, and my grandfather said, "I got something you might like." So he took me over to where they were building the float, the very first one I ever worked on. It was called the Drums. It was 1979. And technically, it was in a tent on the basketball court. About, where you see the open doors in that picture, it's about 80 yards down the road. And they built this building the very next year. This is like the second float built in that building. And from 79 until like 99, after Christmas Day, I would drive down to LA, hang out at my grandparents' house, and I worked on the float for like 10 or 12 days straight, and come home on New Year's Day or the day after. And I became a big wig. I had all these patches. Forgot to bring my driver's suit, which I actually still have. It's in my closet. That would have been a good thing. I forgot about that. So the float is actually on a chassis, which was a UPS truck. There's a little 6-cylinder engine in there. And due to the fact I'm a car guy, I always had car issues to repair when I got there, so I had to rebuild the carburetor. And they put it all up for scaffolding. And I don't know if we won an award that year, but this had a bridge on it. And everything you see it was made out of foam, and then they paint it to what the ground cover is supposed to be. So the gray is going to probably be some kind of gray foam stuff, and then the green is going to be bowels with bricks, and then there's a bridge, and you see the plant in the center of the screen up high. They're just going to take the leaves right off of that, you know. And to get it to float in the parade, you have to make a drawing up and supply that drawing to the Tournament of Roses house, and then they have to approve your drawing. So even though they're building this one, they're already working on next year's design. So you can see it start to come together, and you'll notice the bricks. The bricks are covered in walnut shells, and they're all dipped in glue, and they put shells all around them. And so you can see that the roof is getting built. And what Eddie built that year, I did that little mezzanine thing on the cupola that's sticking out on the side, don't know the name, but I did that whole roof. And every single manzanita leaf, one at a time. But you also see that there's a live tree in the float. So there's actually a planter box in there. So it was growing actually on the float as it went down the ride. And as it gets better, they start putting mums. Due to the fact it's a nonprofit organization, they don't have a lot of money for all the big flowers like you see on those big, huge floats that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. They would put this together for, 10 or 20. And all the kids helped out. Besides the float building, on the outside of the building would be kids picking the petals and being assigned. There's like a cooler outside that had all the flowers in it. Out in front of the building, you can see where the basketball court is. That's where they used to build the old float. And If you remember that car right there, you saw that car at Eddie's house. I know you remember the car. And so it's covered in orange and yellow mums, a lot of daisies, and you can see the roses are being put down. And before you actually see a float in the parade on that New Year's Day, it gets judged 3 times. So it's judged during construction, like now. So they'll try to doll it up when they have the hoity-toity judges come in. And they're usually somebody big in the entertainment industry. There's usually some, Bob Barker usually came by. Then they'd have some kind of a floral person that was into color. And then they might have a photographer or something. But you didn't know who the judges were. You just know that you wanted to kiss their ass when they showed up. So, and if the queens were ready to go, they'd get all dressed up and they'd get in their positions on the float. And everybody would stand around and be really quiet and try to be nice. So you could see how it comes together. And it's getting near the end because there's not many people around. And then it would be just staged in this building until the night or the New Year's Eve before New Year's Day. And then this float would be pulled we'd drive it out of the float building all the way down to the street, which is like a quarter mile, and then they hook it up to a tow vehicle, which is usually a county service vehicle, and then they would tow it the 7 miles to the parade route. And we would always walk down with it for like 7 miles, and then they would line all the floats up along Colorado Boulevard where you couldn't see them. And then, I don't know if my parents came down or not. They might have seen the float in the parade, and sometimes when your moms ask what they want, they always get, so this is what she got. So she made a little call, gave a little donation at the time. We're talking 1984, or when I say 82, so 82. So they buy it at 82, and usually the floats just get destroyed. This isn't a structurally sound building inside. It's a one and done. So I think they purchased it for like $400. They were friends of Robinson's, so they had a truck drive it all the way up from LA. Can you imagine passing this thing on I-5 on the way home? Like, what is this? And so we blocked Pasquale and unloaded it. I don't know if you know Bill Roach over there, Lance Amaral, owner of the big house. Can't tell if that's my mom or not. I don't remember her having that hair, but it's 80s, it's totally possible. Can you guys tell? Is that mom? No? Okay, so I don't know who that is. Could be somebody parked on the road pissed off because they can't get by right now. So, yeah. So the house is in 2 parts, and they shimmed it up so it could make the travel. And then at the back where you see it open here, I think that's where the car was. And so it gets unloaded, and then they drive this forklift through the yard and cruise it on in there. So, of course, I'm just out taking pictures. And so this thing is driving through the yard, and it looks like hell. So we end up parking it on a makeshift foundation, mainly just on support blocks, and kind of parked it there. So you'll see that this little dome, that was the top of the cupola that got parked in there. And if this is the back, right about here was the magical door that I used to come in. And it was like about 18 inches wide, and I had to put a lock on the inside because people would, as if you've gone there for many years, you walked around the house because you wanted to try to find out how the guy got inside. So, and it was all locked up. So they put it together. I think I'm standing on top of the house because if you remember, we used to put a lot of lights on the top of the roof. And back in the day when you could have a shingle roof, it was easy to staple stuff. So probably I stapled a ridge along the top of the big house at the time. And down here in the corner you can see the car. So that's where the house sat. And the yard was pretty fresh. I don't think they started living in the house until 1980. So it wasn't that old. And so it finally got parked in its location, and then ultimately we started putting foundations around it and little blocks underneath, tried to hold up the stairs, and it got a coat of paint. And as you can see, you can look right through it right now. There's nothing blocking the windows. So the house just sat there, and then we made a little trail to it. And it mainly was like a tea house that you go out and sit in front. And after a while, they made a path to the front of it and put some boards down here, and then they filled it full of sand. And it was where we put yard equipment. It was just like a storage thing. And you can see the top over here, and it's not on the top yet. And then ultimately, when it gets all put together, it looked like this. And we had to cut a few trees down, and ultimately, this area down here is where we filled with sand. Catherine Baker, okay. She used to come here in the early days when this was sand. And we didn't have any bricks to sit on or rocks. There was just stumps. And people would sit in the stumps, but she would like do yoga right in the sand, right in front of the house. And just sit there and watch. Of course, the bad thing with sand is, what do cats use sand for? Yeah, that's right. We ultimately had to get rid of the sand. So it got set up in about 1982 and used as a storage shed. And we would put stuff in there. And one day, I was in it, and I used to have this old forestry shirt that I'd wear because I just liked the comfy, and they were cotton, they were green. I had a friend in the Forest Service, and he'd just give me his old shirts. So they would see me walking around the yard putting Christmas lights up with these forestry shirts on, thinking that the forestry department was putting lights up on the house, which was not true. So I just happened to be in the house one day, and this busy, buzzy lady was walking down the path with her friend. I didn't know that. They were friends at the time. But she goes ahead and starts explaining about the big house and how the people are gone to Europe for 2 or 3 weeks at the winter time, and they have the forestry department put lights up on their house. And I'm just standing inside the house going, oh my God. So at the time, I was for many, many years a motorsports announcer. And so I knew people with PA systems. And so after I heard that, I started speaking from inside the house to this lady. And I said, no, the people are there. We actually do put up our own lights. You can go knock on the front door. Well, she freaked out. And she 86'd right down the trail. And then the lady she was with, she didn't know what to do. She was like frozen in time. She just stood there. And she's like, I apologize for my friend. And I'm like, I don't remember exactly, but it's like, yeah, it's okay. And then she slowly walked away. So I went in the house. Mom was making lunch. We sat down outside. I said, oh, by the way, this is what happened. Would you mind if I borrowed the PA system? And so the painters, Noel Painter, if you remember him, and his wife, that's where I started announcing, doing BMX racing. And I knew them, and so I asked them if I could borrow their PA system. So I put the PA system in the house, and I put the speakers up here in this little window. And I had a little box in there. And at the time, none of the windows were covered. You could see right through the house. It was not insulated or anything. And so I just put that PA system in there, and I'd just sit out in there, all bundled up, and I would listen. And if I heard anybody say anything that was wrong, I would correct them. It didn't take long for me to start talking, because everybody had an opinion on what the big house was. And if you lived around the area, you know the third house on the left in Pasquale, the one with the brick pillars. People would say that was the clubhouse for Deer Creek Park, which it wasn't. That just happened to be, it's a gorgeous piece of property right next to the one that John Agel couldn't buy. John, you out there? Okay. Because he thought it was too expensive, and it was at the time, but that's okay. I was sitting in the big house, or the little house. Oh, yeah, and it wasn't insulated or anything. So I would just listen and talk. And I don't know why I just, defending the family's honor with the big house, I guess. Yeah, I guess I didn't have much else to do. But so you bundle all up, you sit inside the house, and you talk. And you embarrass people and do strange things. I wasn't playing any music. I had no pre-recorded or anything. I just sat there. And you could lean up in the windows and see me inside. And let's see. Is Rick Snow out there? Did you used to look inside the windows? You never did? You lie. I think you used to come around the back, though. Yeah. He would sneak around the back. See, you'll see that this is fake. We would go to the property up at the top of Deer Creek Park, and we would go hunting for trees on the property, and we'd cut them up and we'd stick them in the ground to make it look like it was a fake wall to try to keep you from walking around the edges. We'd same to do here, but all you had to do was walk up a squally, hang a left on the little dirt road, and walk up in the back and look inside. And I think that's where Richard would come in and go, "Hey, what's going on, man?" So it's like, so just it kept going and going and going, and then let's see, he worked at Litton Engineering. I think he's passed away. He moved to Ohio. What was the tall guy? Does you remember the tall guy's name? Ken Mueller. Thank you very much. Ken Mueller reworked on that house. I missed that part. Is he still alive? Well, the guy smoked like a train. Come on. He was the thinnest guy I'd ever seen, and man, he just rolled the cigarettes. God, nicest guy in the world, though. Really was. Much nicer than you, Rick. Yeah, he bought a bunch of little cheapo rentals and moved back and became the mayor of Illinois. So, but he was a nice guy. But we had him put on new roofs and re-side it and paint it and make insulated windows, and then we lined the inside of the house with all sorts of stuff. So it was semi-livable, even though I didn't have a heater. And so that place lasted 20 years before it got turned down, and we'll get to that. During that time, I used to decorate the yard a lot. And this was known as the wall. And the wall turned out to be my canvas. And this is very early on. You know how you try to put up Christmas lights and you try to make them fit perfectly in the location, but you always got extra? So the first year I was trying to put lights around these windows, but I couldn't, so it ended up being wow. And then I'm like, okay. And then the next year I'm like, okay, let's go with ho, ho, ho. But you'll notice you can see through the garage. So, and I hadn't learned the cool stapling technique of making it look like a straight line. And so we're getting to that. So we had numerous ones over the years. Do some of the people out there remember these? And I don't have pictures of them all, but I'll try to jog your memory. So there was like Just For You, that was just for Mom. And some of the others were, I know I had Hi Mom. The famous one was We Love PG&E Not. That's when, what do they call it? What do you call HVAC? Heat pump. That's when heat pumps were popular, but they weren't freaking cheap. And so it had We Love PG&E, and then there was a big circle, red circle with a slash through it. Remember that would blink on and off? And I'm sure if there was Twitter now, we got a lot of hate mail from PG&E, but nobody ever said anything. But that was a great one. There was also the Beavis and Butthead one, which I think, we'll stick with this one. It was awesome. And some of you remember the big Santa here on the back side of the house? That was one piece of plywood that got hung up inside the garage on hooks, and that had come out every year. And the whole thing just kept steamrolling into like, what else can we do next year? So you'll start to see that the lines are getting kind of straighter on the lights. And they're getting straighter. Okay, I'm getting my technique down. But you can still see the windows. And so I would end up taping the lights to the glass. It was a pain in the ass. But we got better. And there was the very nice, near the end, let's see, what was it? The Beavis and Butthead one, where Santa's, because they used to say that ha 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 all the time. And then so that's got Santa's cool. And you'll notice that you can't see through the house now, because what we ended up doing is getting 4x8 pieces of plywood, and we nailed it to the side of the house. This is the garage. We nailed it to the side of the garage so that I could staple it to it without having to worry about the windows. And so we had to store the wood too. And it was all color matched and painted. And then there was the Happy Happy Joy Joy one. And it was cool. I just don't remember them all. And some of the times I was living in Sacramento going to college, so I was having to drive home on the weekends to put this stuff up. And so it was a pain. So after 20 years, the dollhouse was demolished. And so it didn't last. It lasted 20 years because of all the care that we did for it. And I wasn't living there at the time, but the parents called me up. And they go, well, we tore the house down. And you don't have to do Eddie the Elf anymore, which I think I should have taken as like, we don't want to put the lights up anymore, so stop doing the elf, okay? But they didn't say it that way. But they said if I wanted to design a new house, that they would pay for it. And I went, okay. So I had the option to retire at the time, but they gave me the option to continue, but I had to design a new house. So I ended up flying to Disneyland, went to Toontown, took a bunch of pictures, and came up with an idea. And the reason why they tore the house down, besides it was, like you said, rotting away, they needed something a little bigger that they could actually put yard equipment in, because I think by then, you had the golf cart then? You need a place to store stuff. And so he designed a little rectangular building. And I'm like, this isn't going to be big enough. So I kept remodeling it and kicking out a side here and there, and he thought it was getting too big. It was still too small in the long run. And from what I understand, that while the project was going on, as you can see, we laid this was on a foundation. It's still, and if you drive by, you can still see it. It's still there. I don't know what kind of care they take of it. But, so we bithethaned it and cleaned it up, and I'm already pre-elfing up here. You can see there's an elf head on the house. And they tore it down. You tore it down in January? Approximately? In linear? Because now all of a sudden I got to design, I got to find some guys to build a new house before the next season. So it had to be done by at least by the end of November, because we got to decorate the darn thing. So drew up some plans. I found some guys that would do it, and cut them loose. And I helped them. And what you see right here is the tree. And the guy who lives up by the airport, Gary Apple, he's a very artsy-fartsy guy, so he said he'd help us out. So he kind of showed me, and we welded this freestanding tree in there. And then we would wrap it with the chicken wire. And I just came up with some odd Toontown-like look to it. And you'll notice that we must have been drunk when we put the roof together, because it's definitely not flat. But that was on purpose. And so the plywood, or it's called wiggle board. So it's laid down at various angles so it doesn't crack, so you can manipulate it. And I don't know where they got it, but it worked. So you can see how it's coming together. And the roof on so mainly it's a big square for the yard equipment, and then this front part got punched out to make it look, elfish, and kind of, continue on with the house stuff. We got shingles that match the house, because by now we've got after the shingles were gone after 20 years or 30 years or whatever, 20 years, you're going to redo the house, and you can't put up cedar shingles anymore, so they're metal. So we got metal shingles on both locations. This guy here, I can't remember his name, but he lives in Arizona now or something. And he still texts me, "How's my house doing?" I go, "Your house is doing fine." And you'll notice this tree right here? It grew this way. So it's called the Dr. Seuss tree. Yeah, and it's like it molded to the house. You'll see a lot of pictures of that in future. So as the house gets built, it gets stuccoed. All the wrought irons put in and the chicken wires wrapped all around it. We'll have cut up hands and then you plaster it. And it slowly comes together. And it gets closer, and the shingles on the roof we bought these. They had little elf shingles. They were made this way. We got to put those up there. And then you'll notice the side of the house, this is actual bark. You can actually buy bark shingles from the East Coast. We bought a couple of pallets of this stuff, and they got varying sizes, like 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1 inch. The stuff's not cheap, but it adds to the whole effect. And this guy here, he was a stonemason, Dave Merrill. He was also our second Santa Claus. And our first Santa Claus, we have his son in the audience. Rick, how you doing out there? I would like to, his dad did a great job. He's no longer with us, because a lot of these people in these pictures are no longer with us, so it means a lot to share some of their history here tonight. And so, though I had no idea Dave wanted to be an elf, technically that's a mortar bag he's got in his head that you would put mortar in, and because he laid all the stonework in front of the dollhouse and the big house. And he quit after I started getting a little picky on how he was doing his work, because I needed it to be kind of more delicate and particular to make it look elfish. So he just he would come and look at it and go, "You're doing a fine job," and then he'd leave. So we had to finish it without him, because he didn't want to do all this brickwork here. And all this brickwork, these were all cut by hand. I think we got 3 or 4 brick out of it. So the house is coming together. And what you're seeing is we put color patches on the house to kind of see what it looked like. And I was coming up with a design, because I called that's the doormat where the kids would supposedly be drawn to stand while they're talking to the elf in the house. And we had a copper guy. I don't know if he was down in Rough and Ready. He would give classes, and I found him online. I went down and talked to him. And so he came up, and he hand-hewn a bunch of stuff for the house. So that's technically supposed to be a tree stump coming out of the top. And then there's a good picture of the bark under the eaves up there. And then we got the guy that didn't even going to be here tonight, working on the walkway. Now, the first house, we had one walkway. People come up and back. As you know, over the years, it got pretty crowded. And you couldn't have people in wheelchairs come up or anything, because it didn't go off the path. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be this ADA-approved elf experience, you know? So you just kind of sit out there and you come up with things. So we made this would be the in route, and then the exit route was going out in this direction, which you'll see later. And then you'll notice that there's wires in the top of these, so we could put lights in. We never did do that. We just figured they'd be knocked over. So I don't know what you're doing right here, rigging up roots or anything, but this tree right here, we had to cut it out. We topped it so we could use it, because we were afraid that if it continued to grow, the roots would just tear up everything in around it. So it ended up being a flat spot. So if you remember the old house, there used to be a rooster on top of the cupola, but we ended up putting the rooster right here. So we tried to keep reusing things. So it's coming together. You're getting it painted. And Mom's here doing the darkening. Gloria Emerald doing the darkening on the tree. So every little indentation got this hand-painted to make it look like it was bark, which took forever. So she worked on that. And so it's coming together. And we had little hand railings down here that we put presents behind, and you got the little teeny bricks. And more or less at the beginning of when it finally got built, the icon finally got installed. And I know that that's still there. So I see that's like, yeah, we got these little teeny steps. And the little teeny steps still there? Yeah, you can kind of see them. I made them small so the kids could walk up to it, to think they were talking to somebody small. And you can see right here, this is where the speaker went. And then this side I could see through. So when the little kids would come up to the front door and I could barely hear them, I would have to lean in here and put my ear up to hear them talk, and then the speaker would come out here. And if they were a little taller, I looked out this window over here. This window was a light box that I would change stuff in there so the kids could actually look in the light box and see like Eddie's shoes and things of that nature. And then over here, as you all found out, it was the cookie window. And this was on hinges. And so I would accept gifts through here, because in the original house, it was so old and dilapidated, there was like about a 1-inch gap underneath the door. So people could bring me food and they'd just slide it in the door. And now they couldn't do that anymore. They had to like fold it and stick it in this corner. But it all worked. And so ultimately, we're finished. And this is also some of the copper work the guy did from Rough and Ready. He charged me an arm and a leg. Or the folks at John and a leg. No, I think I paid for him. But yeah, so we integrated these ivy leaves around the building. And you can see that this is covered with its black speaker paper. Right here is an acorn. Technically, this acorn was a door knocker, but I just took it and used it as a doorknob. I think it worked out really cool. And then behind all the windows, not the door, but behind the windows there was stained glass. The guy that helped do the wrought iron, he had a buddy that lived in Florida. And so he talked to him about it. And he said, send me some patterns and I'll send you some stained glass windows. I'm like, okay. So we sent him off some patterns, and here comes stained glass windows for all the windows. And that was really cool. So this is when it's finished. And so you can kind of get the illusion that you got the ivy all around the tree, and the tree's supposed to go in the house and then back out the house over here. And then we bought these cool lights to add to it, and the mishmashy brick. And so the very first year, we more or less had it in this configuration. And I don't know if this tree was on a resistor yet for a high-low. I don't know if it was. It might have been, because I called this the lying tree. So if I thought a kid was lying to me, I had a controller in here to dim the lights and raise them up. The kid straightened up really quick after that. So with the very first year, people would come around the corner as they're walking down the path. They're looking at the yard, they're looking at all the lights, and they would get down here, and this tree would block their view. Because all this area was just packed full of lights, you didn't see the house. You expected like, oh, we've got a new path, we're entering the path, we get down to here, they turn the corner and they're like, oh my God, what's this? So it was kind of fun to shock them when they came and saw the new house. It was just kind of incredible. And the problem was that they could stand right in front of the house. And they kind of jammed in front, where the old house, you had that porte cochere, the cupola that was sticking out in front. It kind of funneled them into the front door. But otherwise, they could just all stand right here. And there was no order or anything. So as you'll see in some later pictures, we drilled holes in the ground and added fencing and greenery on the outside, so it kind of funneled the kids to the front, and we filled these full of presents and stuff, and that'll be in some future pictures. And I would go online and look at new things to get to the house that makes it kid-friendly. So I found these fiber optic gifts and some catalog, and you plug them in and they kind of glow, and they were bulletproof. They were made out of like cheap fiberglass plastic stuff, but they were bulletproof. And then we bought the fire engine for shits and giggles, And it had the bell, and it had a ladder, and it had the hose in the back. And I ended up giving it away to, I think his name was Zach. He just happened to be the son of one of the gardeners. And so he had it when he was really, really small, and we got pictures of him when he's really, really big that we'll run across later. And so he got to take that house as a gift. He was very surprised. So, and we would just do that, and I wouldn't know who I was going to give it to, but the kid would just walk up to the house and just say, you know, what would you like, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, how about that item over there? And they'd look at me like, are you kidding me? No, I said, go get it. So they'd crawl out in the yard and get it. And so I've got some pictures of some of that happening later on. And then with the 2006 thing I added was the tree faces. And I think there was 12 out in the yard. I think there was like 3 different styles. And I just would nail them to the trees. And, you know, people would drive up, they park their cars, they go out and they hang in the driveway, and the kids run around like banshees, and they're bored. So I would go find the tree faces, which gave them something to do. And sometimes they couldn't all find them. And as the years went by, the tree faces kind of molded into the trees with the vines and stuff. But ultimately, it was a cool addition that people got a kick out of. Trying to make it childlike. And a lot of the childlike stuff was not visible from the house. How do you say this politely? But in the corner of the house, there was the office, Mom's office, which had a bay window. And she would sit in that office, and that was where her computer was. I know you ladies all remember her office, right? And she could see the yard from the office, but she couldn't see the elf house. So, and I would buy stuff, and she's like, I can't believe you bought that to put that out there. So I always had to put it out in the yard so she couldn't see it from the office. So I wasn't trying to do it for her, I was trying to do it for the kids. Yeah, so the whole project took a good 10 months, and if my memory serves me right, I think it was about $40K to put the whole thing up. And it was just a monster. And then the first year we did it, people were they were loving it. They just thought it was great. Okay. So on the setup and decorations, I started setting up in September and putting up lights. And that was just a long, long time ago. And they were just the tacky old string lights that you got from GE. And over time, it got easier and easier because they invented net lights, thank God. And you just kind of throw those on the plants and say, done. But everything else was done. Say what? Go ahead. Yeah, well, I know there's a little bit of anal. We would let you throw them up there, but after you all left, then I'd have to come back and I'd dial them all in just the way I liked them. You know how that goes. But yeah, it got easier as LEDs. And then every year, putting up the lights, it was like making a painting. It was like a whole yard was a canvas to do whatever I wanted to do. And I just had to give the people that wanted to help a little idea of what I needed them to do. And I would do special things on the side. But we did it the elf thing was 30 years, but we had been putting up lights before the big house. I think you moved in the big house in '79. And it just got more and more and more. And there used to be some gorgeous redwoods in the front yard, but had to cut those down. And but we just had string lights, and it was just simple and it looked great. But you kind of end up being like, beat the neighbors. You know, what can I put in my yard that makes them better than the guy next door? And I remember that they used to have a light contest in Nevada City, and I don't know if we signed up for it, and I think we did, but we didn't win. That pissed Mom off. It's like, the guy down in Bitney Springs won because he's got all those Disney things in his yard. But we weren't really in the competition. We just did it because we liked it. We just thought ours was the coolest anyway. But we didn't have any purchased items, just mainly all lights. And when I would put up lights in the yard and as on the wall, I tried to incorporate the trends that were happening that year. So usually the sayings on the wall on top of the garage were the trendy things the kids want to be saying. Excuse me. And So I always try to find new things, as well as new things to add to the yard, such as ornaments. I just thought big was better and keep it simple. And so you had we had red ones and green ones, and people just loved these things. And then they'd hang from those holly trees, became like famous. They're the biggest holly trees you'd ever seen. And they were tough. Man, they took the snow. And you can see that they're hung up by floral wire, but some of them might be hanging down, 4 feet to try to get the look just right. And so usually the two holly trees got switched back and forth. And to make things interesting, I'd probably throw in one different color in one tree to see if anybody would notice. And that's the car from the float. And put lights all around it. And I mean, it was tough. It was a tough ride. It hung in there for all those years. Ended up giving it away, and we'll get to that in a bit too. So we became lighting pros. We knew how to fix those string lights. We had all sorts of little toolkits in the garage and testing, and we loved saving that stuff. Ultimately, it got so old that we'd have to cannibalize the old stuff and use it to repair the other ones. You guys remember all that? And don't forget, I had put a line in here about the lighting, putting away the light parties. Because when the year was up, you got 80,000 lights in the yard, and it's like, how long it's going to take down. So, you offer these people free food and pizza, and they just come in droves. And so we'd put out garbage cans in the yard, and they just take all the lights off. So we'd have these light storing parties. So after all the lights were taken down, all the strings got tested, either that or repaired. So the ladies, I know some of the ladies are here, they would do the wrapping. They would roll all the lights up, and they would test them. If it was a good pile, it'd go one way. If it was a bad pile, it went to the guys who had to fix them. It's a real macho thing to repair lights. And they'd have the lights in the front room of the house, and they'd sit and watch football, and we'd just sit and repair lights. Don't come to the house to watch football and repair lights. It just doesn't work that way. So all the strings got tested and repaired or cannibalized or ultimately thrown away. I mean, some of the lights we'd had for so long, it was ridiculous. And a couple things I do remember, Lance is here, so he can verify that. Every year you try to go, if you need lights, you go buy them. And one year he went to Costco, correct me if I'm wrong. And so he had 6, 8 cases of lights. And he put them on a pallet, took them up to the checker. The checker, there's 12 cases or 12 individual units in a case. The guy only charged him 1 unit per case. Talk about the deal of the century. And usually he's really honest about being nice to people, but screw this, guys. I'm taking the deal. Also, I'm going to bring it up now because the deals, don't feel bad. All the food you have is fresh this evening. But I can't say that if you got candy canes at Eddie's house or Santa Claus. Because right after Christmas, Lance would go hit up all the stores and buy all the candy canes for 10 cents on the dollar. So we stored those fucking candy canes for an entire year until next Christmas. So if you believe in expiration dates, nah, they're not true. So you were getting very well 12-month-old aged candy canes every year you came and talked to Eddie. But I promise you, the bucket that was out in the front, those were all fresh. He bought those today. But he didn't really want to because he's, I got to pay full price for these. So yeah. And in the garage, stored, this is for you folks. I brought this in today. I wasn't going to include it, but I grabbed it and threw it in the car and stuck it on top of the piano. So you see the little guys on the piano? Those are called the bell ringers. Those are from, this is an old store. You guys know this old catalog, the Neiman and Marcus catalog. Remember those catalogs? You'll drool over all those expensive toys. Yeah, I want the car on the cover. Buy one car. Well, this was in the catalog. Did you purchase this? Okay, I think it was like $99, which, is an exorbitant price 40 years ago for this, so what would it be now? But we call them the Drummer Boys. They were all free, you could lay them down, but the motors in them would swing their arms so high that they'd fall over, so we mounted them on a board and put some lights on them, and they play 32 songs in a row. And that was funny, good. But I'd only ever play one song. That's all I ever had to. And sometimes they wouldn't work, sometimes they would work, but I repaired those things more than I can count. But they were in the box today, and they worked. So it was a cool thing. It was a really cool thing. And we're going to come back to those guys in a bit. I got a little story about those guys. But over the years, people would give me stuff I'm still talking about decorations and setup. So the little sign here was a Santa's elf sign. Somebody just knew what I did, and they go, I bet you could use this. And I go, sure. So it was perfect. Santa goes to the left, which is on the front door of the house. Is Santa here? Santa number 3? Yeah, Santa number 3 is here tonight. Where are you? Okay, good. I'm glad you can make it. Big round for Santa number 3. We have some not so nice pictures of you later on. So, yeah, I got some ringers for you later. So, yes, on the arrows, Santa goes to the left because he's on the front porch, and the elves are to the right. And we kept this ugly old stump right here because it hit all the electric in the yard behind the back. And as you can see, we had some green yards out here. So in the reconstruction of the new house, Gary Apple built this sign-in desk, which was a reservation desk for Friar Tuck's. When Friar Tuck's burnt down, they rebuilt it. Now you notice if you go in their back room, there's that concrete tree in the middle. He built that. So he also built this as the reservation desk, but they got it and went like, nah, I don't like it. So he ended up giving it to us. So it got put on a foundation, electrical, and I got the brass guy to build me like a little light setup over the top. And so the books that you have at your table, this is one of them right here. So this would have probably been in 2006. And a little place to put your pen, and we would put Eddie's, Eddie had business cards every year. Some of you people actually used them for bookmarkers and stuff like that. And somebody wrote to me a couple years ago that their father had passed away, and they were going through his books, and they found one of my business cards in his books, and she just wrote about it. She says it was a really happy memory because they used to go to see Eddie. And so these lights up here were also on a dimmer inside the house. And I would play a joke on people. I could see them signing the book, and I would dim the lights down like it was going out, and guys would reach up and they'd tap it like a Fonzie thing. And then I'd turn it back on again, and you could see them get all cocky like, yeah, I fixed it. Or I'd make them go up and down, and then I'd start laughing from the speaker, and then they'd turn around, and I'd just say, I'd bust them. So, no, it was great. And then we got these deer. Where did we get the deers from? Okay. They were cool. Everything got stored underneath the house, and these things folded up. So you can see that there was a fold in the legs, and the head folded down. They're on Santa's lawn right now? Yeah? So who's got them? Oh, Santa number 3? Oh, good. Do they still light up? Okay. And these are pretty cool. They were a bitch to fix, though. And that's ultimately why we get rid of a lot of that stuff, because we just didn't want to fix it anymore. But it looked really cool at night, and and the snow always added that extra little theme. And then when I was living down in Sacramento, what was it, Bed Bath & Beyond, or one of those bedding stores? After Christmas, I saw these illuminated things. They were like 40% off because they looked so tacky and nobody wanted them. So I bought them all, and it turned into Eddie's garden. And at night, they glowed really, really cool. And the front side was nice, but the back side, they all peeled off with this plate. So you had to pull them all apart to fix the little lights that were in there. And I included this picture because I thought Eddie's house had just made it look so Eddie-ish with the snow, and that, even though this was not dated. So you can see as we got more into it, that we added the front grading to the front, and we put net lights around it. And here's the lying tree buried in snow. And then remember MySpace? So originally Eddie had a MySpace page, and then he had to move over to Facebook because that was the new trendy thing. And I made a schedule. Did they post some of the schedules in the walk hallway? Yeah. So people could walk up to the house during an off night when I wasn't there and check the schedule and know exactly when I would be there. The problem with having the schedule in Facebook is that nobody would come to the yard to check it out because all I had to do was go to the internet, and then the place got slammed when I was there, which made more work for me because I didn't get to enjoy it as much anymore. So you'll see over here on the left-hand side how we tried to make barriers so they wouldn't walk around. This is a pretty crappy job. That was pretty chintzy. We just ran some steel wire in it and ran some net lights around it. And then we would stick some logs over here on the side. And we had to build a carport, so this was a carport, so the little metal car would be stuck in this overhang in the off-season as we stored it. And these lights right on the rim, they were all permanent. We didn't take those down. They were stapled in there. We could fix those. And then I don't know where I got the cookie sign, but the cookie sign pointed to the window because that's where the hinges were. And so that's where the cookies got delivered. And a lot of people would see that and so, when do we get cookies? No. You bring me cookies. And let's see, we got the squirrel. And these little trees light up. And you can see how we called it the Dr. Seuss tree, how it got bigger. And it just kind of grew over the top of the house. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I'd stand up on the wiggle board up here and put the ornaments on. Plus we had a couple of rollers that would reach on it because it was pretty steep. But it just made it work. And it just felt so perfect. And then Avatar came out. And I thought, okay, the theme this year will be the Tree of Souls. So I think we did the Tree of Souls a couple a year because it was pretty popular. And it was a lot of work. Normally you just wrap a lamb with lights and you're like, good. But no, you'd wrap about 8 inches, you'd drop it down about 8 feet, you wrap it back up. And so each one of those strings got wrapped with that floral tape that's green and it's got the wire in it. So you'd have those little clippers and you're wrapping around it. It would take days just to do one tree. But they look so cool when they got done. And you can see these over here, they're not ready yet. They're just kind of hanging there. And we got some night pictures going on. And it just got really, really cool. So this is what the people would normally walk up to the sign-in tree, and there would be a book there, and they would just sign it. And originally the sign-in, originally there was the little red wagon, which we'll run into in a little bit. The little red wagon, and then there was a stool out in the driveway that a book was put on, and people would sign the book. I guess Mom did that years ago, and the book came in every night, and she would read the book. As it got more popular, we're adding like 3 or 4 books a year, hence all the books. And this was here so long, it actually had ivy growing around it, and it's still there. And so part of the setup was having these people that are giggling over to my right with Santa would just park in the street, park in the driveway. The golf cart would come out. We'd bring the heaters out and set up the tables. And there's already some ornaments going up, but a couple times a year we'd get a gang. You guys can correct me. We'd get like about 12, 15 people there, and everybody would show up, and we would just knock out the net lights. And Lance, who you heard speaking, he was the organizer of getting all the lights. I was like the director of who's doing what, and then I just cut people loose. And this is some of the testing equipment, and boxes were just ever. And we had this roller thing to help us get in the trees. And some years the leaves would fall off early, and some years they wouldn't. But the colors were just magnificent, and it just looked really, really great. Now, is Johnny here tonight? No way. We got some pictures of you later on too, bucko. So, yeah, this is with his lighting jewel around his neck. So, Johnny's here tonight, and we got Lance down here. He's not with us anymore, is he? Is it? No? Oh, prior to Elliot. Dawn, I think that's Dawn down there. And I know Mom had scoliosis or something, so she was always leaning against anything she could get her hands on. But this is one of the days where they're all coming out. And I did a lot of the ladder work, and they did a lot of the groundwork. But there was these big old, I don't know where I found these. I think it was Sam's Club. And I knew some friends that had Sam's Club cards, which I did not. And I said, go out and get as many as you can, so they'd buy out the stores, and all of a sudden these ornaments are showing up on the front doors. So these were these giant candies. I think they were probably 2 feet long, and they had a little hole at the bottom, and we'd jam steel in the ground and hang them on there, and it fit. It was perfect. I think this cutout was not a Music in the Mountains. What's the other one? In Concert Sierra. I think we took some of their props, if anybody remembers that one. But this is ultimately what it turned out to be. I think it's got some snow up here on the roof, but sometimes I change the lighting, and I just wrapped one of the funky limbs all the way up. And then there's blue lights for the nice hue, and found these ornaments that say Elf, and I would move them around every year. Yeah, and then the lying tree's still here, and then there was a ladder we found some ladder. It got put in the back, and a pile of lights would get stuck there like we were still concentrating. And then there was always a candy cane bucket in the front. And of course, if you look at any Hollywood movie, any scene that a car's driving down the road, there's always water on the ground to make it look good. So, there's water on the ground to make the picture look good. We're going to talk about some of the people that are here tonight. This was our very second Santa. And so that was Dave, and I got people in the grandstand. And now here's our third Santa, sitting on the front porch, and he would give out these bells down there. And I think he's like, oh, she's a good looking. I want her to sit on my lap. And so the people would get their pictures taken. And this is the view from the front yard, if you were looking out, and you could see all the people hanging by the house, and then there was a path. Santa's job wasn't too bad, So everybody? Oh, Thomas isn't here. Did he get married? Now, I went to high school with this guy. We didn't talk much in high school, but then as a stock car announcer, we ran into each other at a track I was announcing with, and it's like, you race? I go, yeah, I talk. And was that when Thomas was running? Yeah. Yeah, and we become closer after high school as a lot of things happen. But nice to see you guys. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. Yeah. See, now this guy right here, for some reason, got a hard on to have a beard with me. For some reason. I remember you wrote that down there. And how old are you now? Duh. And you guys showed up every year, more or less, right? Yeah, total devoted. Santa at a boring time. Santa when hanging out in front of the house. So, yeah. And Santa wasn't always working. They would just show up and hang because it was the place to hang. And so these little stools, snagged them from the Roseville Fairgrounds. Now, Elliot here, bless his soul, he's not with us anymore. He helped out a lot. And John. Well, yeah, he still doesn't have any hair. Now, I'll try not to pick on too many people because not everybody knows everybody here. But everybody's got inside jokes. So some of the dirt about getting ready for the evening, it was a whole ordeal we'd have to go through. Where Lance would build this fire and he'd drag it out and park it in the front yard. And people would show up And he would come out and light the fire, and it would still be light outside. And I couldn't get into the dollhouse because people were hanging out in front of the dollhouse, and they'd see me walking up there. So he had to go out and start talking loudly, which is really easy for him to do. And he would grab their attention, and people would hang around the fire, and then I would sneak up through the trees in the back, and I'd wear all black and bide my time and get into the door. This was a little red wagon that we had in the yard. We ended up bolting this thing on top, and people just centered around it. It set the whole thing. And then that's the bark around the house. And this was like the last night I was in it. I took a picture of this, locking it up for the last time, and I was saying if I'd ever come back. I had more people write on this than anybody else. And this is the special keychain. Somebody's going to get that tonight. I have a whole pile of stuff, so going to get rid of, and I know you want, this is what it looked like on the inside. This was so exciting to me, okay? And when I would show up, these bells would be ringing. That meant I wasn't in the house yet. This was like a thing, this was like a sign language for me and Lance. I wouldn't talk because I couldn't talk from inside the house. So if these bells were ringing, that means I wasn't ready to go. And when I was getting ready to go, then I would play these guys. So when these guys were playing, that meant that I was ready to start talking. So then he would go ahead and point to it. So this was, and I had styrofoam around this stuff. This is at the end of the night when I'm leaving. And I put styrofoam on the holes, so in case anybody turned the lights on, you couldn't see inside. So this switch here ran the bells. This was where I looked out of. I still have this chair, which is a story because about halfway through my 30-year tenure, my first night I would go out, and because I could do nothing for 2 weeks. This was all I did. And it drained me because nobody helped me. I did everything. And they would buy me a gift, and one year this was sitting in there. So, and it was kind of cool. And then people would leave me cards, and I'd tape them here. Then on the wall right about here, I kept writing down Eddie's age so I wouldn't forget how old I was. Because every year he had to get older, so it's like 135, 136, 137. And then this little item right here, this was the rheostat for the lying tree as well as the sign-in tree. So while I was sitting here looking out the windows, I could play with these buttons and tell if a kid was lying, I'd flash them up. This was a ripped apart karaoke machine. So these are the panels for it, and then I'd put my MP3 players or CD players here. And then the speaker was behind this box. So I covered it with cardboard so it wouldn't reverberate back in the room, and then I'd look through this little teeny hole. And then this knee pad down here on the floor I would put here so I could kneel without killing myself while I was trying to listen to the kids. Yeah, we got carpet. Well, there was a reason for the carpet, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So you can see the door right here with the hinges, and I would put on silk gloves so you couldn't see my hands, and I'd reach out to the silk gloves and take the gifts or taking pictures with the camera. And so you can see the hole that I'd look through. And whenever I was in the house, it was pitch black, so you couldn't see. But sometimes I would stick my fingers out, and people would freak out. They wouldn't know what was going on. And there was another light switch over here for some lights around the corner, and I could see out of this one. And, you know, any elf, his soul food is Taco Bell. So, I know. I eat a lot of fiber, okay? And so there was this kerosene heater in the house. And so he would go out, Lance would go out and turn it on before I'd get there. Or it'd be the first thing I'd do when I'd get there, if I got there early enough, and turn that on. So the top of this was always hot. So my food was always tasting good when I had a break. And so this one makes me drool because they stopped making empanadas, and I thought, oh, I loved empanadas. So you go to Taco Bell, you get the empanada, you drive over to McDonald's, you get the ice cream, and you can dip the empanada in the ice cream. It's like the best dessert ever, I'm telling you. Okay, and so if you were going in and read some Eddie stuff, you would hear them, people say, it's like, how did he know that? How did he know is that what I wanted? So I would collect gifts all year long, and people would give me stuff. And then I'd get there. Rick, can you see this? These are in my house still. The Intel bunnies. They're probably worth some money. I don't know. Okay. just go with it, okay? So, yeah, okay. It's as good as a Bitcoin. But so I would lay all this stuff on the ground and kind of put it in a visual location so I could see it, and I kind of memorize it for the night. So when I would talk to kids, and they would ask me what they wanted, or they would tell me what they wanted, and if I had something like it, I could put it right out the door, and they just thought magic happened. And I would give out little apples, and let's see, this was night, I just happened to have cream pies to give out for food. There was the heater. Oh, the Pez dispensers, yeah. Now the Pez dispensers, when I announced at All-American Speedway in Roseville for 18 years, and I had a wireless microphone, and I would tempt people. If you bring me a Pez dispenser, an In-N-Out burger, or a Mountain Dew, I will come and sit next to you and announce the race. I had 2 legal boxes full of Pez dispensers after I quit. And yeah, and what I would do is I got this elf car that I would be in the parade, because I was in the blood donor, Sacramento blood donor, and I had this white car. And so I would put a box of Pez dispensers in the car, and I'd throw Pez dispensers out at the 4th of July parade in Nevada City. So they all went to needy people. And the carpet that you saw in the previous picture here, it used to be here, but we'd move it. This was like the line of death. This was my area to work in, and this is where the peanut gallery would sit. Because people would come in, they'd sign up to sit inside the house with me. And there was a table and chairs, and they could walk up and they could look out, but they couldn't get in my way because I had to be bouncing around this wall all the time. And so these were my naughty and nice stamps. So people would stick their hand in. If I didn't like the kid, I could put naughty or I could put nice. And I could put the kids against each other. And then all the pictures on the Facebook page, I used a digital camera. Now, if I did that today, people would thought some old guy's perving inside this house taking pictures of kids, which is totally not true, but it's times have changed, man. What are you doing with these black gloves taking pictures of kids from inside of a house? You know, how old are you? Yeah, I'm 140. So there was peanut gallery chairs, and then for some reason they collected these bunch of gifts, and this was near the end of me doing it in like 13 or 14, maybe 15 year of. And so I had all these gift bags to give out. And this was a night I had a date. But I didn't know this was happening. I would come up and I'd say, yeah, this person's coming up to the house this night. They're either going to meet me there or I'll pick them up and they'll come to my house and I bring them on over. And I guess my parents liked this particular person. So we got candles, we got the believe word, which was my big word near the end. And they got the mood lighting for the candles, the wine in the glasses. Oh yeah, they did it upright. So she's getting sloshed while I'm doing my elf thing. Nah, I don't remember. No, I don't. So this is the kerosene heater in there. So you can see it puts out the decent glow, which means it puts out a lot of fumes. And so, since due to the fact I'm 6'3", by the way, and I couldn't stand up in the first house. I had to hunch. So the second house, as Rick came by around the corner, he was talking to me, and he's like, yes, this was like, what did you say it was? The size between the original house and the second house. So we had the heater, and if you stood up, you cut the kerosene fumes. Because the first house leaked like a sieve, so you never smelt it. And plus, the windows weren't enclosed, so so it went out. So it was kind of cold in there, but at least there was a breeze or something. But the new house was heavily insulated. And if you stood up fast enough, you got a whip for this. So some people would come in and hang in the house, and it's like, I can't hang anymore. I'm going to pass out, So I could turn it down, and it depended. I had to hide it. So it usually pointed toward the chairs or back in this area, so it didn't glow on me, because I couldn't put it up in front because it'd leave a glow on me because you could see my face. So when people were coming to the house, this is like before anybody would show up or there was a dead time, because in the rain, not everybody showed popular in the rain. So I could actually just hang and play music and kind of chill, because if you were there on a crowded night, it was freaking nonstop. For 4 or 5 hours, I did not shut up. And I'm sure some of you guys stood in line for at least an hour or two, waiting for that chance to get your, 2 minutes and a free candy cane, and hopefully he's got a toy for me. Or handcuffs. I have that picture included here tonight. So this is what I would see out the door when kids were looking in. This is what I would stick the camera out of. And so it was pretty magical to me. And of course, this was a cold night when you got the heater going. And so I would get in the house, and Lance would hear the bells. And while I'm getting ready, he would take people away, because it would make noise, and you could hear me ruffling around in there. So he would talk to the people in front of the house, and this is something I taped about him talking to a little kid. So I haven't actually spoken yet for the evening. These are just people waiting in front of the house.
Now look at the carport.
Fire's going. People are signing the book. So we had a little stuff around the corner, and the kid could go look. And then people would put pillows out. People would just camp there for hours and just kind of listen to the comedy routine. So I know these people aren't here tonight, but they were coming for years and years. He's their brother and sister, and they always gave their effort. He's some physical trainer in town, so I don't know. And we had these little signs made up, and this was a bitch of a sign. It would always go out. You'd always have to fix it every year. Hated that one. Once again, I tried to, due to the fact I saw the ticket list, I knew who was coming. This was the night, they weren't making Twinkies anymore, so I had bought a couple boxes of Twinkies, and I had frozen them, and I'm like, I got to give these away. So I don't know how old these were, but I was giving away original Twinkies that night. And these kids were digging it, man. Just digging these original Twinkies. I could probably sell that box for $20,000 today. These people, you might know some of these people. There you go. They made me cinnamon rolls every year. And there's a cinnamon roll pile in that bag. And so if you stood still long enough, I could take a good picture, and it was hard to take pictures because I tried not to use a flash, because the flash would black out everything in the back. So this is natural lighting, so you really had to stand still, and I had to get the f-stops just right. Crabs are back again, younger than before, bringing me some good. So look, we're at 2010. So you're 26, so that's 13. So this is when he's halfway through his life already from the days out. John and his group. This was Christmas Eve. Every year they'd come at Christmas Eve because they would go to church and they'd dress to the nines, and they made sure that they always came out and talked to me every year, so it was always nice. And it was a cold night due to the fact the heater's here. And you know these people? I know these people. He used to be a finance guy in town. I can't think of his name. But he was cool. He always brought his kids out, and they were, I think they were Mormons? And so they always had to do a church thing. And all their kids are grown, and they moved away. But I always had a good time with them every year. And so, yeah, this year, you look at the date. Today is Christmas Eve. I would never do anything on Christmas Day. This was the first year I did anything on Christmas Day. Of course, on Christmas Day, it rained. I only had 3 people show up, and I'm sitting out there for 5 hours. And I'm like, I'm not doing this again. So they were the very first ones to come out. And I had already been in there for like 3 hours just listening to music. Food's all gone, don't want to miss anybody. So this was when David Archuleta was popular. So the day before, she's telling me what she wants for Christmas, and she wants David Archuleta. Needless to say, he wasn't under the Christmas tree. And so the next day she shows up like, dude, you didn't perform. I didn't get David Archuleta. So that was pretty cool. Mr. Fink. And he made these T-shirts up for me, which I still have one. And if you follow the Eddie Facebook page, I've talked about this before, but I'll actually go to parties and put this shirt on underneath. And I won't tell anybody, but it's like, yeah, I'm in the elf mode. So he made 2 shirts up. One with, he just made this up, and then all the tour dates. Of course, the tour dates went from 1987 all the way down to 2013. And if you do your math, that means I have absolutely no Christmas life for those years because I couldn't go anywhere. But one year, I did not go. That was about in 1987. And Eddie got married. And the gal that Eddie got married to knew that he was a stock car announcer, knew that he did the elf, but all of a sudden after we got married, I can't do that stuff anymore because I'm always busy on Saturday nights, even though that's who I am. So I tried to do the good first-year marriage guy, and I didn't do Eddie the Elf that year. I think it was 1988 or 89. And I had to text my brother to ask what the name was because he filled in for me that year. He was living in local. And he was Rodney the reindeer. And so that entire year, he only did like 4 or 5 nights. So he was Rodney the reindeer. And by the time the next year came around, I was single. I was divorced. And not because my brother came to me after the Christmas was over. He goes, dude, I cannot do that. You have a knack for that. I am not sitting in that house talking to those people all the time. I'm just not going to do it. So hence, Eddie has been a single guy ever since. But it was a lot of fun for that. You might know these local people. This guy here, he's a world-renowned juggler. And he'd been on like Johnny Carson or whatever. I don't know his name. Friedman's? Yeah, he's excellent. And his kid was also juggle for me too. And he'd come up and they'd always give me really nice gifts. And then John Blinder in the fam. And I did this because this is my sister and my nephew photobombing in the background. As a lot of people would do, they would photobomb. And there's the cinnamon rolls every year. And even after I stopped doing Eddie the Elf, I could give her a call and she'd make them. I just have to drive to her house and she'd come out and give me some cinnamon rolls. And then even the ladies would come out and talk to Eddie. But this lady, her husband was a friend of Lance. And I don't know who these ladies are, but even the ladies would come out on ladies' night and they would bring the wine, and they might have been inside the house because the house, they look like your glasses. Well, what would happen early on is the Eddie thing got so popular, the parents got pissed with all these people in the yard. So, because everybody come knock on the door like, hey, hi, you got any wine? It's like they're going to go broke. So they would leave and go to other people's parties. But when they would go to these other people's parties, the people at the party would go like, why are you here? It's happening at your house. And so they stopped going, and so they wouldn't have any parties at their house anymore. So what they would do is they'd get their wine, they'd come out and sit in front of the dollhouse all night long and enjoy it and have some wine. And of course, that's the only time that it ever got bitched at because my sister and my mom don't have my sense of humor. And they would sit out there and listen to me, they would go, Eddie. And I would go like, you guys need to leave because everybody else is enjoying themselves. And to my knowledge, I only had 3 people ever get pissed off at me. My sister and my mom. And there was one lady, she was dressed up full church gear, and they had the whole family. They were dialed to the 10s. I don't know what sect they were, but if you ever came up to Eddie's and you were on the entrance path, there was a speaker down there on the entrance path. So you were getting pumped by Eddie the Elf. So by the time you got to me, you knew where my humor was. All the way, yeah. And so they come up to the house, and the whole family kind of took a left because you could exit. You didn't have to come to the house. But she walked up to the house, and she's like, Eddie, you're really rude. And I go, I'm sorry, you're not getting the humor. And so it's okay. And then I got some beer from the local brewery guys, came up, made a delivery one year. They went out of business. Then I think you know JR. JR is connected with this place because he knows about it. So JR used to do some electronic stuff, and he also worked at the Blockbuster in town. Remember that? So he is a thespian. And he heard about the show, and he just texted me yesterday. He's like, dude, I want to come, but I can't make it. I heard you're doing a show. Thank you very much. And I had already included this picture in there. And I told him I was going to talk about him, so he was really happy. So this is one of the items that people would make. You know, they just bring me stuff. And I've got food every night. This is what I'm showing. This is one night of food. And I would tell, you could tell that kids made this, and this got bought, and I got a whole story about Peeps, but I won't go into that tonight. And then people would make me homemade cookies, and they'd write cards, and some people would put stuff in the cans, and then the kids would send me the letters. They'd hand deliver the letters. They would be either addressed to me, Eddie the Elf, or they were to Santa. And then after the night was over, I'd take all this stuff home, and I just made more work for myself. Then I'd start to scan it, and then put it on Facebook. So you could get up the next morning, and you could watch or read the Eddie Gazette of all the stuff that happened last night, and all the stuff would be scanned in, and people would bring me their notes. And of course, then you got the people photobombing in the back, and then the drunks here tonight. So, because people would get there early. And, you remember that, this has got to be 15 years? 13 years, but one night he came out with some brewski, or some wine. It's some medicinal, yes, very medicinal. And I think he was hanging out at the family house, because there's other family photographs. And Santa, when he wasn't Santa, he got a little hammered this night with drinking the wine. And this is the cookie lady. She'd always write to me every year. I know her husband. And she made me whatever cookie I wanted. And, make me sugar cookies with designs. And this guy. There's a whole story about this. But we ended up talking about sex, I think. And is he here? Okay. Was he married at the time? He just got engaged, and something about, oh, that's right, I gave her a tape measure so she could measure his package, and then when he sat down, I had this on the floor, and of course, I'm just rolling with this all night long, and so I whipped these handcuffs out of the house and give it to him, and as you can see from the people laughing over there, that they remember that it worked. And so all this stuff just kind of came into play on the night, so I tried to include stuff. Now, this couple, they dated. They always wore the same things on their head every year. I think they got engaged at Eddie's house by the fireplace, and they would come every year, and then, of course, they end up bringing their kids, and that's what would happen every year. People brought their kids, and we had 3 generations come into the house once. They're the last ones hanging out in front of Eddie's house, and they've been drinking all night long, and they want Eddie to come inside so we can do Christmas gifts. So nobody knows the second verse, so my sister goes into the second verse, and everybody's like, what the hell are you doing? We don't know the second verse. So lots of good times. And then I want to do some special kids for you. Now, this girl's called the Hoochie Mama Girl. And this was like the second year she showed up. And the reason she's called the Hoochie Mama Girl is because the first year she showed up, she was wearing this. And I called her that, and so her mom would come to the house, and she goes, this is the Hoochie Mama Girl. So it was awesome. And so some kids wanted autographs, so they'd actually physically stick their hands in the door, and I would sign their hands. I don't know if this is a Baker gang at the time, But the Baker gang did show up when they were much younger, and you can tell me how old they are now. And I'm sure you have this picture, because did I take this or you took this one? But you might have sent it to me and put it on Eddie's Facebook page, so that's why I have it. But I love the coonskin camps. Can you say coonskin caps anymore? Okay. And now this kid here, he would come with his parents every year, and they always take a picture in front of the house, and he kept getting bigger. And his dad was a music guy. And he was having a birthday, and the wife contacted me and said he's playing over at above the City Hall. What was the one above City Hall? The bar. McGee's. Was it McGee? Yeah, he's playing at McGee's on his birthday. So I said, I will show up, but I won't tell him who it is. So I show up. I'm sitting at the bar, and there's a lady I know that's sitting there that also drew me a picture, which I have. And so they're up there playing. I got the card. So I give her the card so she can go give it to him. And she was very thankful. But then I was just hanging out. So before the night was, I walked up, and he's getting ready to start his second set. But I walk up, and I introduce myself to him because nobody knows who I am. And he's just like, nobody shakes my hand. When they find out that they're actually meeting the elf, it's like arms around me. It's like a huge moment in their life. It's like, it's the dude. And it's so cool. So his son, he taught him how to play. So one year, he was learning how to do saxophone and stuff. So he would bring he's trying to be a musician like his dad. So he would bring his guitar up. And one year he brought his guitar up for me.
It's okay. I got one for him.
You guys been good this year?
Yeah, I guess so. And that's pretty much it.
It's like anybody gets a guitar. We run the first 5 notes, and that's all we learn.
But
Excellent.
That's pretty much it.
What do you want for Christmas this year?
Well, he's getting a puppy.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
gonna
I
get
saw
a
the
puppy.
puppy on the internet. It was very cool. It's a good-looking dog, too.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
But mostly I want a Ouija board.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Those can be a bummer sometimes. Those are scary.
My friend has one, and I was gonna use it, but my friend was too afraid to use it.
Yeah, some people think they're actually real. So be in a good state of mind when you use a Ouija board. And never late at night when you're mad. All right.
You see the guitar, kid.
Let's see what he's got. But you can see everybody just poured out their heart in front of Eddie's house. And it was awesome. This lady made vegan cookies, brought me vegan cookies every year. This is her daughter. Her daughter can't have sugar. And they showed up every year, so she couldn't have a candy. So you want a candy cane? No, she can't have a candy cane. But they showed up every year. And due to the fact I meet all these people and kind of lock them in my brain, one year I was at the post office, Nevada City Post Office, and she was there. And I'm behind her walking out with my mail, and I said, you make great cookies. And she looked at me like I was like some freaking pervert. And I was like, no, I'm Eddie the Elf. I just wanted to say thank you for all that time, but I don't know if she heard that because she was just like beelining out of the sidewalks, so I didn't get to talk to her. And I just like this photograph. It just happens to work. And the parents of this kid, they'll write to me and they go, we just cherish this photograph. It's just so great. So that's for me that's with a flash. So you can see what happens to the other lights. It just doesn't work. This is a great story. The kid was very shy. He would come to the house, and I asked him what he wanted, and he wanted to be a superhero. I happened to have a red cape in the house that night. So I passed the red cape out through the door, and he put it on, and you could just see his chest build up, like, I'm awesome. So I will never forget that moment. Never forget that moment. Now, this is the recipient of the fire truck the first time. His name is Zach. He got so old, he couldn't fit anymore, so he decided to bring it back to me. And he apologized because he didn't have the ladder, and he kind of messed up the fire hose. So I don't know how old he was, but he couldn't fit, of course. And so I had him autograph the truck, and we put the truck back out in the yard. And this is Eric. Eric received the very first gift we had, and I didn't bring the card, but his parents what they would do is they would find out the address of the big house, and they would write cards and send to the big house, and I would get them. His parents wrote me a really nice card because he was so great with a tricycle, and he couldn't sleep that night because he got a gift from Eddie the Elf. This kid didn't want to take no for an answer. He just jamming his head through that little teeny hole to see me inside the house. I'm like, okay, I'm going to blind you with the fucking camera and get the hell out, you know? And this is the cookie lady again. And I have no idea who these people are, but people are just doing it. So the kid's waiting to give her my gift. I don't remember if we gave this away. I think she got this before Christmas, and because I saw pictures of this, and she was pushing this up the path. So I think she actually brought it up to show me what Santa had gotten her. I've always loved this picture. This is the snow globe gal. I've got a lot of pictures of her growing up over the ages. She would bring me a gift every year. And a lot of kids would, the reason I got this is because I just remember this one gift. And I would keep gifts for like about 3 years. But what am I going to do with all this stuff? You know, I didn't throw it away. I kept it. And so after about a 3-year period, I would start regifting it out to the kids to pass it on. And I just remember her. And I wasn't going to make a big photo spread of some of these people. And just some of the pictures were just, I think we've forgotten to go look and what they mean to us and how they all got dressed up so nice. And this was the year of the flamingos, and so I let the kid just go out and pick up a flamingo from the yard so he could take it home as a gift. I swear this, I don't smoke weed, but I swear this is the biggest joint a kid ever gave me. And I guess he's trying to bribe me really bad. It's like, hey man, Rastafari with me and give me something good. And he's like, you know, and I got Elf from the kid, but I just made that up. But no, it's like, I don't know what was in there. And now this is the next recipient of the fire truck, and that's his mom. And they wrote me a very nice card because they couldn't get this kid to stop driving the car around the house once he got it home. He didn't want to go to bed. I know I got this from somebody that knew what I did as a hobby. So this is like a race car, and it's not an announcer, but he's got the championship cup. So. And then, of course, I got beer on occasion with a growler. Of course, I had to return it. And in some of the pictures, you'll notice we just gave, as we were closing down the last year, we just gave the yard art away. What are we going to do with it? So I would just talk to her, and I would say, what would you like for Christmas? Blah, 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 blah. She said, might have mentioned Disneyland or something, or Mickey Mouse. I said, why don't you go get it? And so I gave her a Mickey Mouse. This gal, she brought all her equipment up to actually, you know, flute me a Christmas song, and that card was huge. I know I don't have that card anymore, but yeah, she set up her whole thing and played it. I got a nice card from this thing. I don't know can't think of his name. Troy. I wrote it all down, but I didn't bring it with me. But he loved Star Wars, so I whipped out these 3 Star Wars movies through the hole. And then people would write on Eddie's Facebook page that night. It was like magic. The kid asked for Star Wars, and these 3 DVDs pop out the window. I don't know how he does it. And okay, well, this was his card to me. His name was Tyler Cox, and so he ended up bringing a card to me, and I gave away a Cadillac car. The kid loved it. And this was the naughty and nice stamps. So she's showing me nice, and I guess probably I was nice. I gave them both nice. So there was all sorts of stuff going on behind the scenes.